The name of this activity is rational numbers on a number line. So once again, I wrote the definition of rational numbers over here. Rational numbers describes any number that's positive or negative, and it could also include numbers that have decimals and fractions, mixed numbers, improper fractions, so on and so forth. So it's really just a very broad spectrum of numbers. The only numbers that are not rational are numbers like pi, for instance, which as a decimal, if you were to write that in decimal form, it would like go on forever and ever and ever. So not really something that you'll be learning about too much this year, but it's still important to know the term rational numbers. So to start, we are going to be plotting these numbers on the number line, and we're going to label each point with its numeric value. So as before, let's pause the video and go ahead and try and do that yourself first. Alright, so as we know, zero's in the middle, we got our positive to the right, negative to the left, and whenever we're making a double number line, we always count as distance from 0. So 1 is one space away from 0 to the right. So negative 2 is 2 spaces from 0 to the left. So here's negative 2, right? So we always start at 0, and we always count 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 1, negative 2, negative 3, negative 4. Or 1, 2, 3, 4. So numbers are always kind of describing their distance from 0. If it's negative, it's to the left from 0, and if it's positive, it's to the right from 0. So next number is positive 4. So that's going to be 4 spaces away from 0 and to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4. Negative 7. That must be 7 spaces away from 0, and it's going to be to the left because it's negative. Negative 1, negative 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here is negative 7. 7 spaces from 0. And 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alright. And now we have a series of inequalities. We need to decide whether or not they are true. Is negative 2 less than 4? True. And a rule here is every negative is less than a positive, no matter what. So anytime you have a negative value, no matter what the number is, it will be less than a positive. Alright? So once again, why don't you try and pause the video to answer these yourself first, and then you can continue watching to check your work. So the next one says negative 2 is less than negative 7, right? Because we can see the mouth, the inequality is trying to eat negative 7. And remember what we discussed before, right? So how do we write this? So once again, numbers, as they go to the left, the farther left you are, the smaller the number is. So negative 2 is not less than negative 7. This is false, right? The bigger the digit of the negative number, the smaller it is. Like how we discussed before, negative 1,000 is less than negative 1. So this is false, because negative 7 is farther left on the number line. 4 is greater than negative 7. True. And we could think about this in two ways. One, it's further to the right. Any number to the right is bigger. And we also just know, once again, positives are always greater than negatives. And the final one, negative 7 is greater than 8. Absolutely not. For the same reason as before, because every negative is always less than a positive, so no way negative 7 is bigger than 8. Alright, so now we're going to continue our work with rational numbers. Here we're getting into fractions. So Andre says that 1/4 is less than negative 3/4, because of the two numbers, 1/4 is closer to 0. Okay, so do you agree? Explain your reasoning. So if we went back to this number line, 1/4 is less than 1. So 1/4 would just be like a quarter of the way to 1. So it's 1/4 unit away from 0. And -3/4 is -3/4. It's not quite -1. It would be about here. So he's saying that because 1/4 is closer to 0, it's less than. That is not correct. Because once again, as always, negatives are less than any positive. The further to the left you go, the smaller the numbers are. Incorrect. Is further to the left, and therefore smaller. All right. So for these next few problems, once again, I think this would be a great opportunity for you guys to test your knowledge and complete them first. So pause the video, and then you can just resume when you're ready to check. So, which number is greater, 1/4 or 5/4? So I'm just going to keep using this number line up here. So 1/4 is, like we said, 1/4 spaces away from 0. 5/4 then would be 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, 5/4. So 5/4 is equivalent to 1 1/4 or 1 1/4. So which number is greater? Well, 5/4 is greater. Is greater. I'm sorry, we're actually supposed to be writing this as an inequality. So the Pac-Man mouse should be eating 5/4. And once again, it's important to note that 5/4 is equal to 1 1/4. So yes, if there's a whole number, then it's definitely larger than just the fraction. Now, which is farther from 0? 1/4 or 5/4? Well, so we just marked both of those. So here's 0, 1/4 is right there, 5/4 is over there. So then 5/4 is farther from 0. On to the next page. Which number is greater, -3/4 or 5/8? Well, I'll just draw another number line here so I'm not flipping pages. Here's 0, so 5/8 is positive, so it's to the right. So I'm going to put 1 and -1. So 5/8, if I split this up 1 into 8 smaller pieces, that would be roughly about here is where 5/8 would be. And -3/4 would be about here. Okay. And so, which number is greater? Well, 5/8 is positive, so it's got to be greater, right? Any positive number is greater than a negative, and the further to the right you are, the larger you are. And now, which number is farther from 0? So, kind of hard to tell on like a self-drawn number line. But if we wanted to convert these, these are hard to compare because they are not, they don't have a common denominator. So if we wanted to turn -3/4 into something eighths, we could multiply both sides by 2, and that would get us -6/8. Okay. So remember, if you ever want to make an equivalent fraction, just like ratios, if you multiply or divide both sides by the same number, then you can get an equivalent fraction, and now they're easier to compare. So negative 6/8 is 1/8 further away than 5/8 is from 0. It's further away from 0. Okay, so if you were counting by eighths, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5/8 away from 0. And this would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6/8 away from 0. So the larger the integer, the farther away it is from 0. Okay. Is the number that is farther from 0 always the greater number? Explain your reasoning and draw a number line to help you illustrate your answer. So I'm going to put 0 here. Okay. And so is the number that is farther from 0 always the greater number? So I'm going to put negative 5 down here. And I'm going to put 2 right here. So negative 5 is farther from 0 than 2 is, right? Negative 5 is 5 units to the left, and 2 is only 2 units away from 0 to the right. But is negative 5 greater? Absolutely not. So, farther from 0 does not always mean greater. Right? So, how far to the right you are always determines greater. And so now, flipping over, make sure that you read your lesson summary, just kind of going over the different pieces of the lesson, and the big ideas I pulled out. Once again, as you go to the left on a number line, the numbers get smaller. So negative 3, even though that number is bigger, is actually less than negative 2 because it's further to the left. Numbers get larger as you go to the right. And also positive numbers are always larger than negatives.